Hello, everybody. I hope everyone's been enjoying their GCAP 2020 so far. I just wanted to take this opportunity to have a chat to you about the different opportunities that you have outside of the games industry, especially for people that are just finishing up their games degrees, their games studies, and are looking to potentially get into a job somewhere. That it's not just the games industry, that the skill sets you've just learnt have an option in. Um, so first of all, an acknowledgement of country. I want to pay respect to our elders, past, present, and future, for the land of which we're speaking today. Here in Canberra, that is the Ngunnawal people, and pay those respects to our elders, past, present, and future. Also, being a government employee, I have to do in a disclaimer in relation that there's going to be a lot of different companies that are mentioned to showcase to you the many different aspects and many different areas that you could be working in. This does not particularly mean that the Australian government are endorsing any of these particular companies, neither that any of the companies that are potentially excluded means that we're not ignoring them. They are just examples that we're trying to use to show the current state and potential future state of this industry in particular, and the many different industries that are coming with the games aspect. So who am I? My name is Adrian Webb. I went to study games design, games programming in 2007 and 2008 here in AIE in Canberra. I worked then as their student liaison officer, talking to a lot of the parents about why they should allow their son or daughter to do a games course and what potential opportunities they have for them, which got me interested in the world outside of just the games for entertainment space. I then moved into the defense realm in 2011, and I've been there ever since, the last 9.5 years, looking at how we can be using games industry aspects within our simulation space and vice versa. I've been lucky enough to be part of the Serious Games competition here in Australia from 2014 to 2016 and continually help out with that where possible. And I've been lucky enough to be recognised from both the games industry and the simulation industry as well, which I feel very privileged to be. I've been at GCAPs many times. My first GCAP was in 2008, and I think I've only missed one or two since then. So hopefully, I'm certainly looking forward to seeing all you all back in 2021. So, what is a serious game? This is the definition that you can find off Wikipedia. Pretty straightforward, very broad. But for me, it's as simple as looking at a game being used beyond just the entertainment space. Now, this can be something that's been created, but it doesn't specifically have to have had that second effect being built into it from the beginning. Some great examples of this is Minecraft. When Notch was creating this game, I don't think he saw it being used in the education space as much as it has. But if we look at every Department of Education here within Australia, they have an enterprise-wide license for Minecraft to be used in schools. Left 4 Dead is a great example of how they're using it to teach ethics in different universities courses. Where in the World is Carmen Sandiego is an obvious one when it comes to that edutainment space and a really shining light that people talk about in a positive light. One of the best ones, I think, is ones where other people approach you, and that's certainly happened with the Putty Pals. So they created a game, someone saw that, they saw that there could potentially be used for that, they did a small trial, and then they went back to the company and said, hey, can we take this further? And they've worked in collaboration together to see that grow, which I think is a really cool example. You might hear other names for the word serious games and for the topics of serious games. You can see some of them down there. It depends what you would like to use. In the end, it is entirely up to yourself. I will continue to call them serious games, but I've heard plenty of these being used around as well. Games for change is obviously a big one. Applied games, games for impact, games for purpose. In the end, it comes down to your personal preference, but it's all meaning the same thing. Even though we might be talking different languages, we're all talking the same one in the end. So, where are serious games used? They're used everywhere. This is just some of the different industries that they're being utilized in, and there are more that I'm sure that we could list, but they're just so widespread now that people are using them just like we used TV and film in the past when it was a new medium. The games allow that extra level of expertise to come into it and different aspects as well. And I continually talk about traditional learning versus games-based learning. I want to showcase that within a games-based environment, you can add a lot of secondary benefits to learning that you can't add in a traditional textbook. Traditional textbook with a case study is a very linear aspect. It's all written. Where in a game, you can have that primary objective of teaching that particular topic, but then you add a whole lot of secondary benefits and introducing new topics and concepts that you might build on in a later environment. And I think that's a power that games have. Rehabilitation and remedial tasks are a very good one. And we see games being used a lot to help with that rehabilitation space. There are plenty of case studies and examples of that. The Digital Australia Report 2016 or 2018 had an example of using Dance Dance Revolution and dance mats to help reduce falls. If anyone's seen the accessibility controller and the Super Bowl ad that they did in 2019, that is a really great example of allowing people to play together and the opportunities that that accessibility controller can provide. It's a really powerful ad. But games can allow people to work on a level playing field even though there might not be a level playing field in real life, which I think is a really cool thing to do. It allows people to confront difficult topics, especially in their personal space, their personal life. It allows them to confront them in a safe and controlled environment as much as possible. PTSD is a big one that we use within defense, and we're using games-based environments and games engines to help people come to terms in some way with their PTSD aspects. A lot of research is being done about this in the University of Southern California. Certainly have a look at that if you're interested in that. Familiarization with places yet to be created. So, before a ship is delivered, we are able to 3D walk around it and find those little aspects and little problems that we would see. It's much easier to change something in the design stage than it is once it's been delivered and seeing that same problem there. And that's not just in a defense space, obviously in an architectural space. Before you've bought your brand new first house, you're able to walk around it in a 3D environment and see, the light at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, at midday, and compare those type of aspects as well. We're seeing more and more of those being utilized as well. Shining a light on difficult topics is obviously a big one as well. In Australia, we've had some really good examples with the Woomera aspect of showcasing how it is to be a refugee in those refugee camps and allowing for some of that empathy to be given across. Another example that I think is a really cool one is a game called Shrinking Pains. It was created by a lady who was looking at the showcasing her journey through anorexia, and it was a really powerful game to play because it really allowed you to get an understanding of it from her particular perspective, and it's obviously allowed other people to recognize that and go through those same type of journeys, and it was very powerful from what I understand for her to put it into a games-based environment as well. So you might say that you're only learning to make games, and that's why you're doing a games course. But you are dead wrong. Those skill sets that you're learning can be used in a range of different areas. Obviously, simulation is the one that I come from, so that's the one that I'm going to talk about a lot. But there's a range of different areas that you can be utilizing your skill sets in. It's you've just got to abstract yourself from, doing games programming or whatever, and have a look at those skill sets in a more wider context and seeing where they can be applied. And unfortunately, games industry itself is a tough industry to get into. We see here, this is a graph from 2016. You can see here that these are all the students that were doing games courses at universities and different games colleges. And back in 2016, these were the amount of jobs that were available. Now, we would like to see that grey graph to continue to grow, and I think it certainly has been here within Australia. It can still go a bit further, don't get me wrong. But the question becomes, what happens with this big gap? And this is where other options and opportunities are available to you in other industries if you've just got to look for them. Is there a lot of difference between games and simulation? Not really. It depends on where you're particularly looking. For me, the simulation space, someone explained it, is that, in games, when you've got gravity, you can put it at 0.01 and then you can be throwing cars everywhere, where in a real life simulation, obviously you leave gravity as is and then you can't do that. There are other aspects of make-believe versus real life, doing negative training aspects, which is a really important topic. There are obviously more serious aspects sometimes to the different training aspects, because you are training for people for lives on the line sometimes, especially in the emergency management space. emergency responses. This is training that people will be doing to how to handle themselves under extreme circumstances and stressful situations, and they will go back to these default training aspects. And so it's important to make sure that we get that simulation aspect right. Now, and I'm not saying that just because you're studying games, don't make games anymore. I'm saying you've just got to be open to the opportunities that are available to you. There are plenty of areas where you can be looking into. And there are plenty of people that I know in my personal life that have gone from the games industry into the simulation industry. And there are plenty more that have gone from the simulation industry back into the games industry. I guess the idea is that you want to keep your skills relevant. And after doing a games course or studying games for 3 or 4 years, going and working at the reject shop as their manager is great for certain skill sets. But if you're doing art or programming, that's not a way of keeping keeping those skills relevant and up to date. Where obviously if you go and work in a simulation company or work in one of those industries that are using game engines and games technologies, that can help hone those skill sets, which certainly builds on your resume when you're trying to go, if you ever want to go back into the games industry. There are plenty of people that I know that have left the games industry, gone into the simulation space, gone into other industries, and have really enjoyed it. They've enjoyed different working conditions, working hours, those kind of things, and they've continued to grow and prosper within those industries themselves. So it's entirely up to yourselves, but there are other options available to you, and obviously by staying in a relevant field helps keep those skills up to date and honed as well. We can see here, this is from the latest Digital Australia 2020 report. 2/3 of people are using games for work training. So I think that's important to see, and I think that will continue to grow. Over 50% of people and children are using games in schools. We can see here that the main reasons people play video games is not just for entertainment. It's for promoting general knowledge, for improving life satisfaction. Managing pain, I think, is an interesting one in there. So we can see that we are branching out more than just to entertain ourselves when it comes to the game side of things. Now, you might say that, there's not a lot of people that are doing this kind of stuff. I would vehemently disagree with you. These are companies that are doing this here in Australia and New Zealand, and only Australia and New Zealand. Obviously, there are plenty more companies that are doing this worldwide, but I just wanted to showcase to you, this is just from the top of my head, writing down different companies, using our Serious Games Australia and New Zealand list of developers. Obviously, I couldn't fit everyone that's on that list on this page, but we've got a range of different topics and examples here that you can be looking at. You've got Big Ant, who are one of the best companies that we've got here in Australia for the game side of things. They've dabbled in this space with some of their police training in the beginning as well. Opaque have done a lot of work with NASA and dementia. If you haven't seen the virtual dementia experience, that's certainly an interesting story to see. Monkey Stack, and for me personally, very good, because Monkey Stack won the best international serious game with their project DSAL. And that's a great example that I continually use when I'm talking to people, because I get a lot of people come up to me and say, oh, look, Adrian, I've got this idea, I've got this concept that I want to teach, but I don't think it'll work into a game. And I say, well, if the water desalination process can be taught to kindergartens through a game, your idea can be made into a game. It's a case of working in collaboration with game developers. So the game developers bring what they do best, which is make fun and engaging games. You do what you do best as a subject matter expert in that particular field, and you bring it together and work in collaboration to create an amazing game that is also informative and completes those objectives and tasks that you wanted it to do. Another great example of that is CME4 in Sound Scouts. It's a very different way of using games-based tech, and they're using it as a screening test. So they're using it so kindergarten students will play through it, and when they finish it, the adults will get a result, whether they should go for a proper hearing test or not. They worked very closely with the national body in hearing, which I think is the National Acoustics Association, and they continually collaborated to make sure that they are having the right statistics and the right results for that. And I think it's got something like a 97% success rate. But it's a really great story of how you can be using games in a different way to better engage people with their health aspect. Anyone that was watching PAX online would have seen the guys from Excite up in Brisbane, and they were working in conjunction with Real Serious Games to do some medical research. And medical research is obviously a key one. We see the FDA recently approved games for as a form of treatment, and some of the mentions before with Dance Dance Revolution. Some other ones, Chaos Theory Games have recently won the Best Serious Game last year with their Beach Daz, which was an environmental-based game, and they've certainly done some environmental games in the past. You've got Real Response, which has done some first aid training. Sweebo, which is obviously a New Zealand company. They've done a lot of work in the physical rehabilitation space using a balance board, and they won the Best International Serious Game in 2019. So again, our region represent on the world stage. You've got different companies, obviously Playside Studios been in the news recently. You've got Bilby Virtual Labs and Dragon Bear looking at the indigenous aspects, and the Bilbys with their virtual songlines I think is a really important thing to try and record our history, our indigenous history, and allowing people to get an understanding for what it was like back in those times. And I think the way that they have switching between the real world as it is today and that cultural world that we would never have seen from 200, 300, if not further years ago, I think is a really cool little technique that they've got within there. Urban Circus is a great example of the urban planning space, and they have their own engine and using a games-based techniques and products to help showcase to people how different traffic flows and those kind of things will work. And then you've got different companies, especially in the defense space. You've got KBL Wild, Bohemia Interactive, which is a really great Australian success story that I've mentioned many times before, modding Operation Flashpoint, and it's now being used by every Western military in the world. You've got Calatrix with their Titan IM, which is doing some pretty awesome stuff when it comes to AR technology as well. We also have some internal government departments that are doing some aspects of that. Services Australia is a big one, using games-based technologies in VR and 360 video for better customer engagement. And so these are just some. Like, there are many, many more. I can only fit so many on a page of A4. But please, have a look at this link. Go have a look at some of the developers. And I'm sure if you are a developer, please add yourself to that link. But there are many more that I don't have listed here. But the moral of the story is there is a market, and it continually grows. Just don't look at yourself and say, I'm just a game developer. There are so many opportunities that are available for you. It's just a case of finding a topic and then utilizing those skill sets to build on that. So like I said, some of the advantages that you have, you're well versed in the technology space, especially the developments that are coming out today and the capabilities that are provided for today. VR and MR is a big one, especially when we're looking at the COVID aspect. They're continually looking for better ways to engage. The different game engines, Unity and Unreal Engine, are being used for way more things than just entertainment spaces now. For visualization is a huge one. So please have a look at seeing how you can use those skill sets in some of those other areas. And social media is a big one as well. More and more places are trying to get that community engagement. And if you're doing those kind of things within a game space, they can translate across quite well. The processes that we use. So like I said, it's not just the technology aspect, it's the processes that we use for developing these type of games. Rapid prototyping, agile development, collaboration, and I cannot speak more highly of the skill sets that you can get in the collaboration space, because like I said before, when you've got yourselves as game developers creating awesome and engaging games, and then you've got the subject matter experts who are trying to get a message across, and they're trying to get that across in a fun and engaging way, the more you guys and girls can work together, the better results you will have. Because otherwise, if it's too one way, then it's a fun and engaging game, but it doesn't do what you wanted it to do. But if it's too much the other way, then there's a whole lot of information, but no one wants to play it and enjoy it. So you've got to have that good mix, and that collaboration aspect is vitally important to that. Different ideas. bringing a diverse and different, unique look. So when I was employed for defense, I had no defense background, but I had my gaming background. And that allowed me to bring a whole different kettle of fish when it came to some of the topics in some of the projects that we were developing and moving forward. And I think it's really important that sometimes that other industries do get an outside perspective and an outside look. And if you bring your games skill sets to that, it's amazing what you can come up with. So I just wanted to mention some of the tips because I get a lot of questions when I do these type of talks about how to potentially get into other industries. Obviously, a big one is resumes. They're pretty similar to what you would be putting forward for a games company, but there are some slight differences. And to be totally honest, they can apply to your applications to the games industries as well. Make sure you know who you're applying for and what they're really good at. So when you're applying, if you're applying for someone that builds tanks, it's no use putting a whole lot of character models in there. You know, you want to put cars or trains or big mechanical aspects in there as well. It is a bit easier with the art side of things, but you know, with the programming or design space, if you're creating products or creating programs around that, you might be creating tool sets that are more relevant to those particular areas. But make sure you're looking at your audience that you're going to. You should always be curtailing and personalizing the resumes to each particular company that you're going for. It shows that you're taking the time to really research that particular company and get into it. And that'll impress any recruiter on the other end of those applications. Remember that the skill sets that you're learning within the games industry courses and those kind of areas, you know, you've got to abstract them a little bit and pull them out to a more general topic. You know, project management is obviously a big one. Meeting deadlines is an important skill set. Finishing projects is one of the most important things that you can do. You know, for me, you can have that you've started 10 or 15 projects. But it's the one that you actually completed and seen all the way to the end. That's the one that I'd be the most interested in. And the last one is be honest. Don't say that you can do something on your resume that you can't actually do. And especially within interviews as well. If someone asks you a question in an interview and you don't know the answer to it, just say, look, I don't know, but I'll do some more research and I can get back to you. And nothing impresses an interviewer more than in a couple of days' time you send them an email saying, hi, I just wanted to follow up from that question that you asked a few days ago. This is what I would do in that particular circumstance. It shows dedication. It shows that you're on topic, that you can research. It's a really impressive skill set. Obviously, another tip to get into other industries is trying to find where those other industries are, making those connections. Obviously, this year has been a really difficult one, but it's also opened up more opportunities as well. You know, being in an online environment. The Games for Change Festival, which is usually only held in New York, was free for everybody to engage with this year. So anyone that had a computer could be involved in that. And they had a great little networking tool where you could jump in and out and talk to a range of different people that you might normally get to talk to. You know, IGEA have their coffee catch-ups every Tuesday. Simulation Australasia have their Sim Cafe that's every Friday. These are different areas that you can get into to talk to different people. Universities have their own groups as well. And I think for myself, if I was going to a university games course and I was looking for an interesting third-year topic or third-year project, I'd be looking at other different areas and other expertises within those universities and see if I could team up with another third-year person and say, hey, you've got all this data. How about we make it, present it in a gamified way or create some game out of that? And see what you can work with. Because I think there are plenty of opportunities there and available. And games is a great way to showcase large amounts of data in a fun and engaging way. A lot of people say to me, oh, I don't want to get into another industry because it might just be boring, and it certainly wouldn't be as engaging and as interesting as the games industry work that you're doing. Now, that may or may not be true, but in the end, you're doing what your boss is telling you to do, what your manager is telling you to do. And if that is work on a particular topic, you know, or run through this same thing 100 times, do this same animation 100 times. You know, I recently watched the Disney creation of Frozen, and the amount of time that they spend on animating just one small particular bit of that movie that may or may not get into the end result is intense and amazing. But it is what it is. You know, your manager has asked you to do that work, and that's what you will do. Now, whether you're in the games industry, defense industry, mining industry, education industry, it's the same thing. You're doing what your boss tells you to do. Is that always going to be interesting? Unfortunately, not all the time. But please don't use that, oh, I'm just going to be doing boring work in another industry as an excuse for not looking into that industry. That is the worst excuse that you could ever use. One of the last ones, and the most important tip, is to stay informed. Obviously, there are different journals and papers coming out. There are journals for serious games. One of the best ones to do is be watching the websites. And two of the best websites that we've got are gamesindustry.biz and here in Australia, ingames.com.au. They try and keep up to date with all the different stories that are affecting our industry within the game space, and you should really be watching and keeping an eye on those websites on a daily basis. If you've got other interests, however, make sure, if you're in VR, you could be looking at Upload VR or Road to VR. It's entirely up to you, but make sure that you've got a few different websites that every morning you religiously check to see what's going down in that particular space. And the same with if you're looking into other industries, make sure you have an interest in those other industries as well. It's no use trying to get into another industry that you don't have an interest in. Passion can be a two-pronged word and can be divisive sometimes, but you need to have some other drive to look into those other industries to allow you to have better engagement with them as well. Because if you don't have that interest in the first place, then it's never going to work out. You need to have some drive. So hopefully that's helped explain a bit about serious games, having a look in other industries. I'll be on the chat throughout today at GCAP Loading. I've hopefully been on the chat for the last couple of days at GCAP myself. Please feel free to reach out. I'm more than happy to have a chat with anyone. Obviously, I can't get you a job, but I'll help you with any advice that I can, obviously without detrimenting yourself or others. But hopefully you've enjoyed it. I look forward to seeing everyone at GCAP 2021 and having a proper conversation face to face. I'm certainly missing not being able to be at Games Week and being down at Melbourne and seeing all my friends. But everyone's in the same boat. So yeah, I will hopefully talk to you all later. Thanking you. Bye.